I think we have an excellent Foreign Secretary. And when it comes to it, there's only one person I can remember round here knifing a Foreign Secretary, and I think I'm looking at him.
You have the charisma of a damp rag and the appearance of a low-grade bank clerk.
I say there's no difference between Ed Miliband and David Cameron. I say there's not a big enough difference between Ed Miliband and David Cameron.
I think it is fair to do what the Labour Party want to do, which is actually to increase borrowing. That doesn't help the future generation.
Let's put that point directly.
This country with the strong, the stable, the good and decent government that I think we need so badly.
Britain is, in a few words, an incredibly tumultuous political nation. Unlike many other democratic countries, its political factions are highly entertaining, exciting, and volatile.
Yes, the honourable gentleman should be thinking about the television career, and he get his brother to run the Labour Party.
In recent years, the major left and right-wing parties, Labour and Conservative, have been fading in popularity. The reason for this is that there's a feeling among the general public that there's a political class of career politicians who don't really engage in the everyday problems of the people. The other parties include the Liberal Democrats, the Scottish National Party, the United Kingdom Independence Party, the Plaid Cymru Party, and the Green Party. All the parties here are adversaries, fighting each other constantly using character assassination and slander. The media in Britain plays a very pivotal role in shaping the narrative, and their role in spreading various narratives plays a vital impact on how the public think.
Now, what do you have in common with all these very rich people?
Let's take these in turn, because let's take this in turn, because I think that is completely unjustified.
The BBC, the most dominant player in the journalistic game, is publicly owned. Today, we'll be looking at the leaders of these parties, the views these parties hold, and how these factions fight each other tooth and nail for complete power of the United Kingdom.
Yes, technically this is a party political broadcast on behalf of the Conservative Party. But tonight I don't propose to use the time to make party political points. I don't think you'd want me to do so. The crisis that our country faces is too serious for that. And it is our country, the whole nation, that faces this crisis, not just one party or even one government. This is no time to put party before country. I start from there.
In the 1970s, Britain was known as the sick man of Europe. It was yet another failed socialist experiment. The trade unions dominated politics, taxes were high, and the regulations were crushing. Many people weren't even allowed to own their own homes, and many industries, such as the airlines and telecommunications, were owned by the government. As a result, economic performance was humiliatingly poor, and the quality of life was relatively low compared to the rest of Western Europe. Then came Margaret Thatcher, who in the 1980s took Britain by storm and brought new life into the British economic system by embracing a free market agenda as Conservative Prime Minister. However, other establishment members of the Conservative Party, known as the Wets because they were considered to be weak, feeble, and soppy, weren't so pleased with her work, and used the excuse of her skeptical views of joining a political coalition with Europe as the reason to abandon her. This mass abandonment from members of her own cabinet forced her to resign as Prime Minister.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're leaving Downing Street for the last time after 11.5 wonderful years.
However, the Conservatives kept winning elections until 1997, when they were upended by a newly energized Labour Party headed by Tony Blair in one of the biggest landslide elections in British history. However, a few years after joining the war in Iraq, public opinion turned against Blair, forcing him to resign as Prime Minister in 2007. His arch-rival in the Labour Party, Gordon Brown, became Prime Minister. Though he was known as a competent but shy Chancellor of the Exchequer, it soon became apparent that he was an indecisive, weak, and unsympathetic Prime Minister.
And we not only saved the world, saved the banks and saved the banks and led the way.
In the 2010 election, the Conservative leader David Cameron won with a campaign promising to end the high-spending, high-taxes approach of Labour. However, he was 20 seats short of a majority and had to form a coalition with the centre-left Liberal Democrats.
Do you now regret when once asked what your favourite joke was, you replied, Nick Clegg? And Deputy Prime Minister, what do you think of that?
We're all going to have. I'm afraid I did once.
Much has happened since now and then, and we'll look at the different factions fighting for control of 10 Downing Street, the home of the Prime Minister.
That is the choice in 43 days' time. Competence and a long-term plan that's delivering instead of the chaos of economic crisis from Labour.
The first faction we'll be looking at are the Conservatives, a quote, establishment centre-right party in Britain. David Cameron, the leader of the party, is seen as a relatively unpassionate but stable figure in British politics. The media has portrayed him as a posh, upper-class politician distant from the issues of the everyday people.
I'm saying there are 700,000 people on 0 hours contracts. Could you live on one?
No, look, as I said,
Could
some
you live
people.
on one?
Well, I want to create a country.
One of his ancestors was even a king. In recent decades, the Conservative Party have been steadily moving away from the free market economics that Margaret Thatcher championed, and have been slowly embracing state-private relationships while at the same time slightly lowering some taxes. This concerted move to the left shouldn't come as a surprise, as the traditional Conservatives had always been suspicious of free market economics. However, other than Cameron, there are also some other interesting members of the party trying to gain power, Boris Johnson being the most realistic potential contender for leadership. Smart, charming, and eccentric, the Mayor of London has an interesting history, especially in the tabloids. Friends with David Cameron since university, and not afraid to take cracks at the Prime Minister.
There you are, Dave. I know that Dave will win in 2015 when the economy has turned around and when people are benefiting from the tough decisions you have taken, not least coming on to hear this speech today. So many happy birthday, by the way.
The ambitious Tory, born in New York, looks to be the next leader of the party, though he'll never admit it. Even his detractors say he's the only politician in Britain who's capable of, quote, making you feel good about yourself. He's even got bikes in London named after him, the so-called Boris bikes. George Osborne, the Councillor of the Exchequer for the Cameron government, looks to be another potential candidate for Tory leadership. In the 2015 election, the Conservatives won a 331-seat majority government, completely defying all the odds and the people who predicted that they would never reach the 326 seats needed for a majority.
If this exit poll is right, Andrew, I will publicly eat my hat on your programme.
Have you got a hat?
This has been a government of the few, for the few. It's time for a better plan. It's time for a Labour government.
And here's Ed Miliband, the leader of Labour. The Labour Party, since 1997, left some of its more socialistic roots with the rise of the New Left under Tony Blair. This meant more of a departure from state ownership of industry and more of a move towards the funding of existing public services. However, although not being an outright socialist, under Ed Miliband, the party has been slowly moving back to the left. This means more suspicion towards the US and an assurance that even though Labour left the country bankrupt during the recession, the party did not spend too much during their time in office.
As a result of the global financial crisis.
Too much?
Well, I think there were spending programs that maybe weren't as good as they could have been, but I don't believe, that I don't.
At first look, Ed Miliband is a very unique figure, to say the least. He comes from a Jewish background, and his parents were Polish Marxists who survived the Holocaust. This is why some have dubbed him Red Ed. In the road to becoming head of the Labour Party, Ed fought against his more moderate brother, David Miliband, in a leadership race, beating him by only a little more than 1%. This was done with the support of some socialist organizations as well as the help of the trade unions. Ed was part of the more left-wing faction of Gordon Brown, while his brother David was part of the more moderate New Left Blairites. This has caused much ill feeling towards Ed, who joined the leadership race only after knowing that his brother was running. If that was not bad enough, the Ed Miliband of the media doesn't fare much better.
They see you as a North London geek.
Who cares?
He's seen in the media as being weird, geeky, and incompetent. And Ed, well, he hasn't done much to help himself in this respect. He's fell flat on his face with public relations. Sure, you have the sandwich picture, which wasn't exactly flattering, but could be categorized as a bit unfair. But the truth is, his campaign has committed many mistakes on a consistent basis, including the laughable, full-size Ed Stone that includes a list of platitudes about not breaking his promises if he's elected. Some have dubbed this giant stone as Tombstone, and many of his own supporters have been left scratching their heads. But more disturbing is one of his announced policies to criminalize Islamophobia, which in practice would mean throwing free speech out the window. Who's supposed to judge what's Islamophobic? One shudders at the thought of government dictating what's right to say or not. He's also fumbled in several interviews and debates.
The point is, people think you're just not tough enough.
Well, let me tell you, right? Let me tell you. Okay.
Come on.
Let me tell you.
Question.
Good evening. My question is this. You sound gloomy most of the time. Are things really so bad?
No, but they could be a lot better. Am I tough enough? Tough enough? Hell yes, I'm tough enough.
Worse is the fact that he's probably partly to blame for the rise of the SNP in Scotland, a traditionally Labour stronghold. In the 2015 elections, Labour was trounced by the Conservatives and the SNP, winning only 232 seats, losing 26 seats since the 2010 election. Ed Miliband has since resigned as leader of the party.
I take absolute and total responsibility for the result.
I want to say to Ed, we share a desire to see the back of the Tories, but surely we don't want to replace the Tories with Tory light. We need to replace the Tories with something better.
The next big faction we'll be looking at is the Scottish National Party, or the SNP, headed by Nicola Sturgeon. Sturgeon, an unapologetic leftist, is a firebrand populist and a competent debater.
We can lock David Cameron out of Downing Street. So tell me tonight, is it the case that you would rather see David Cameron go back into Downing Street than work with the SNP?
No,
surely that cannot be your position, Ed.
The popularity of the SNP has increased dramatically after the outcome of the Scottish referendum in September of 2014, where the Scots were given the choice to vote if they want to stay in the British Union or form an autonomous nation-state.
The silent majority will be silent no more.
The Scots decide to stay by a margin of 5%, but many of the unsatisfied people who voted to leave were motivated to support the Scottish nationalists, hence their newfound popularity. Adding on to that is the fact that Nicola Sturgeon is seen as an assertive, powerful leader, and you've got what looks to be like the new third biggest party in the UK. Nicola herself was inspired to get into politics because of Margaret Thatcher, because she, quote, hated everything she stood for.
Unlike Mrs. Thatcher, in a sense, I want the fact that I am in this position to change things for the better, or help to change things for the better.
Sturgeon's got the Scottish people behind her, and her party poses a palpable threat to Labour, who aren't used to the competition. Is the popularity of the SNP just a temporary fad that will wear off? So far, not quite. In the 2015 elections, the SNP won 56 out of the 59 seats in Scotland, completely crushing Labour. To put this in perspective, the SNP won only 6 seats in 2010, meaning that 2015 has been a landmark year for the party.
It was a broken promise. You betrayed the young people of our country.
Can I reply to that? I mean, you know, I get this sort of pious stance from Ed Miliband. This is the man who was part of a government that said no boom and bust in the economy and crashed our economy.
Everything changes on a turn of a dime. The same can be said about the popularity of the Liberal Democrats. In 2010, the Lib Dems were elected in a supposed wave dubbed Cleggmania. They actually lost 4 seats from 2005. This was named after party leader Nick Clegg. He was elected with the promise that his government would not raise tuition rates for university students. However, in 2010, when the Conservatives did not have enough seats to form a majority government, he reneged on his promise after joining a coalition with them. So instead of being the rising star in British politics, Clegg has become a major liability for his party.
You, sir?
Yeah, I just wondered if you've got plans for a new job after next week when you become unemployed and your party becomes an irrelevance.
Charming. No, I don't.
An apology he made to his constituents for not keeping his tuition fee promise was even satirized in a music video.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. There's no easy way to say I'm sorry.
The Lib Dem coalition with the Conservatives hasn't helped either, as the Conservatives were able to take credit for the major reforms, being the senior partner in the coalition. The Lib Dems can be best described as the moderate political party in Britain. They've even capitalized on the focus group positivity of using the word moderate, and say their party adds brains to Labour while a heart to Conservatives. They say this generally translates to economic policies that don't spend as much as Labour, but don't cut as much as the Conservatives.
Look left, look right, then cross.
However, that obscures what the Lib Dems are really about. The truth is that they're politically correct and socially liberal, while at the same time being slightly center-left economically, inclined to spend a lot of taxpayer money. So no, they aren't socialists. In fact, their party was originally made up of a group of Labour members who abandoned the Labour Party in the early 80s when they thought it had become too extreme. At the same time, they aren't rabid free market supporters either. So in the short term, it looks like the Lib Dems will face some major challenges ahead of them to gain back the trust of the British people. This was clear in the 2015 election, when the Liberal Democrats lost 49 out of their 56 seats, being able to barely hold on to 8 seats. Nick Clegg has since resigned as leader of the party.
But clearly the results have been immeasurably more crushing and unkind than I could ever have feared. For that, of course, I must take responsibility, and therefore I announce that I will be resigning as leader of the Liberal Democrats.
There just seems to be a total lack of comprehension on this panel, and indeed amongst this audience, which is a remarkable audience, even by the left-wing standards of the BBC. I mean, this lot's pretty left-wing. Hang on. No, the real audience are sitting at home, actually.
If there's one party that represents a radically different view, the United Kingdom Independence Party would be it. Labeled as a racist, anti-immigration hate fest by the media, UKIP is pretty much hated by the establishment parties.
We have a housing shortage across this country. But you know what, Nigel Farage? It's not caused by immigrants. In your world, every problem is caused by immigrants.
The truth is that UKIP is liberal in the classic sense of the word. It's pro-free market and anti-European political union. I'd like to say that its immigration policy is misunderstood by the media, although this is usually done for political reasons. The problem that the UK faces is not an immigration problem per se, but a welfare state that can't support the exploding growth of a rapidly expanding population. Add to the fact that Islamic extremism in the UK is on the rise, and you've got a large group of people who think that immigration needs to be toned down a bit. The immigration debate is even talked about by the establishment parties now, albeit in a very hushed, cautious way, with Labour even admitting that it's made mistakes on the issue.
We got it wrong, yeah.
Your figures were farcical.
Yeah, they were wrong.
Yeah.
However, the most interesting part of UKIP is its leader, Nigel Farage. Charismatic, down-to-earth, and generally seeming to be a friendly all-around guy, Farage was a former Conservative who left the party after it decided to join a political union with Europe. For over a decade, he's been a member of the European Parliament, exposing the amount of corruption and incompetence in the European Union through a variety of entertaining speeches, including this one.
Sir, you have no legitimacy in this job at all, and I can say with confidence that I can speak on behalf of the majority of the British people in saying, we don't know you, we don't want you, and the sooner you're put out to grass, the better.
The truth is that he's made some very good points. Members of the European Parliament, or MEPs, aren't even allowed to decide what laws they want to pass. That means that all the creation of new legislation is done by a non-elected council of bureaucrats, whose decision process is so non-transparent and whose laws are so difficult to comprehend that it puts even seasoned reporters to sleep. This new legislation makes up more than 50% of the UK's new laws.
The Commission and Mr Barroso from your ivory tower, what you are saying is let them eat cake. You are showing that the European political class are out of touch, uncaring and simply plain wrong.
UKIP has brought this issue front and centre, promising, if elected, to give the British people a choice to stay in the EU through referendum. Virtually all polls show that a majority of British people are in favour of leaving the EU, an issue that none of the other parties have addressed. David Cameron says that he'll have a referendum, but he's lied in the past. Unfortunately, even though UKIP was able to win 13% of the British vote, they were only able to win one seat in the 2015 elections.
On a professional level, I expressed today a degree of disappointment. On a personal level, I feel an enormous weight has been lifted from my shoulders, and I've never felt happier. Thank you.
Plaid Cymru offers an alternative. We offer hope for a decent future for our young people, for thriving, successful communities. In a hung parliament, Plaid Cymru can win for Wales.
There's also Plaid Cymru, which is a Wales nationalistic party whose current leader is Leanne Wood. They advocate for an independent Wales within the European Union. Party leader Leanne Wood is quite unremarkable and uncharismatic. Plaid Cymru is a left-wing, high-tax, high-spending, social democratic party.
Plaid Cymru would not do any deal that would involve propping up a Conservative government. This austerity drive is about meeting their ideological aims, which is about to try and keep the public expenditure as low as it can possibly be. My politics is the opposite of that.
They are allied with the Scottish Nationalists and the Greens in England. However, their popularity is limited even in Wales, which is dominated by Labour. They were only able to win 3 seats in the 2015 election, no change from 2010.
The Green Party are the real challengers, offering 1 million new jobs, combating climate change, restoring vital community services.
And last and least are the Greens, an English neo-communist party using environmentalism as a cover to promote Marxist ideology.
We can give our young a properly funded education. We can provide free health and social care for our elderly. We must make sure that everyone has food on the table and a stable home to live in.
They propose the same old leftist policies, spending more taxpayer money on new public services, nationalizing private industries, and supposedly protecting the environment by shutting down every energy producer. Natalie Bennett, the leader of the Green Party, is an ally of Nicola Sturgeon. In the 2015 election, they are able to hold on to their single seat.
If he wants to talk about party funding, let's talk about a party bought and sold by the hedge funds.
The Labour Party has been lobbied by the trade unions to get rid of this act. What have they agreed? They've agreed to scrap the Lobbying Act. That is what they've done. They are owned lock, stock and block vote by the trade unions.
So there you have it. British factions fighting each other for power, power, and more power. Britain is a unique political country. Its politicians constantly try to attack each other personally.
Let me make this prediction, Mr. Speaker. In a moment or two, he will be looking as awkward as when he ate that bacon sandwich.
Reporters and interviewers are harsh, mean, and sarcastic, often interrupting politicians trying to speak.
Now, if you're going to be straight talking, if you're going to hit,
I think what that
your straight talking where you're going to hit these so-called taboo issues that no one else talks about, then you need to be a bit careful.
I think what that advert said.
And at the same time, many in the general public feel there's no hope with the state of their politics. Everything is volatile, everything can change, and all of this is really interesting. This is Britain, and this is Factions.